Hey everyone, it's Joe and
Michael
from Bullion Now, bullionnow.com.au, selling you the best bullion bars and coins, shipped to you worldwide from Melbourne in Australia. Why are we here today?
We're expanding on our fakes.
Okay. As in we're buying more fakes and going to sell them over the counter? Is that what you're telling me?
No, and actually we won't sell these over the counter.
Of course not.
This is one of the interesting ones. So the ones that we've seen before, and I'll point you to the fakes video just here. We'll put a link into it. And if you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to see it because you need to be very aware of fakes that are out there for your own education. But this is slightly different. The ones that we're about to show you are actually fakes, but in some cases they're actually worth more, or they have a higher precious metal content than the real thing does. Now, quite often people look at me funny when I say that, but jewellers used to produce, particularly the sovereigns that we're going to look at the moment, there's a thing called a jeweller's copy, and when they required a certain year sovereign or certain patterns, or they might want to change the size of them fractionally, those types of things, then the jewellers quite often made their own sovereigns, and quite often they have a higher gold content than the real one does because they've just used whatever alloy they've had lying around at the time. Or it may be that it meant something to someone, so they've actually melted, grandma's wedding coin type of thing into the shape of a sovereign. That style of thing. So sometimes we get through what are called these jeweller's copies, which they are fakes, but they hold quite a bit of gold in them. So we're going to look at a couple that have created both in the sovereign sense and also in the pre-decimal Australian sense.
All right. Which one do you want to do first?
We'll do the top one first, which is actually a real one.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to look at the designs first.
Yes.
You can actually see, just glancing straight at the design, the one that Joe's focusing on at the moment, that's actually a real sovereign.
Yep.
As we'll see when we XRF it at the moment. But the two underneath are actually fakes.
And that I can't tell.
No, you couldn't pick it.
That's
through the naked
amazing. That is amazing. Now we don't know when this jeweller's copy here was actually made.
No,
could have been a very long time ago, but it could have been. But it's a fake technically.
Yeah. The bottom one is a bit more obvious. If you do the comparisons, the edgings are slightly more rounded. The rim of it is slightly more rounded, and usually that's what lets them down, is actually the reading on the rim. Okay. It's very hard. It's why coins have reeds on, particularly the older ones, because it was one of the ways they could stop counterfeiting, but also it stopped people from clipping the coins, scraping the edges of them, keeping them.
That makes sense. It's also it's a much shinier sort of luster, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is.
All right, let's get to testing this one just to prove it.
So while it's testing, quite a lot of people use the fish tools, to FISCH, I think it is, the fish tools to tell if a sovereign is real or not. They are incredibly good. However, every so often the jeweller's copies can slip past them. So they're not bulletproof, but they are incredibly good, and they're a very easy, cheap plastic tool that you can buy off eBay or a lot of the coin dealers and that sort of thing.
For those who have no idea what you just said about a fish tool, can you explain what that is?
Not really, not without having one here. But what they do is it has the correct size of a sovereign built into it, so you can drop it into that tool to check the size. Yep. It also it's a balance beam type thing, so you put it up one way, and if it doesn't sit in the correct position, you know that it's the incorrect density.
Oh wow!
Of it, and there's also a pass-through slot on it, so you can check the thickness of it.
That's cool.
So we can see here, and like I said, this is a real one, so we'd expect it to be somewhere around that 22 carat, so 91.7, 91.8.
And even less the carat. This is the beauty of having an XRF machine, of which we'll also link above now to our popular video, Why Every Bullion Dealer Needs an XRF.
You wouldn't leave home without it, I can tell you.
That's for sure.
And you can see there the balance is copper, which is what you'd expect in a normal sovereign.
Yep.
Let's have a look at the next one down. Now this is the one that is probably the more realistic of the two copies, but you can see there it's only testing at about 74-75% gold. It's got 23% copper in it, and it's got just trace elements of silver in it. Now that could actually be part of it, or it may just be that it's rubbed up against something that's silver. Over time, we don't know. But as Joe said, and when he showed the pictures, that one was an extremely accurate copy and would be very difficult to tell without an XRF or a fish tool.
Absolutely.
Or fish scales, I think is their actual correct term. To be able to tell that it's a fake, because it's a very good jeweler's copy.
Yeah.
This one, which doesn't look quite right, and I'll admit to the naked eye when we first saw it, we all kind of went, oh, I bet that's a jeweler's copy.
Look at that.
But yeah, you can see it's a much higher gold content.
Wow.
So we're up around the 93-94% gold, and only half a dozen% there, so 6% copper.
Wow.
So in actual fact, in a straight bullion term, this one is actually more valuable than the real one.
That is crazy.
And again, you know, people say, why would you make it with more gold in it? Because it may have been what they had lying around.
Yeah, as you said, like mum's wedding ring or something like that got melted down, or
anything along those sort of things.
That's so cool.
So with SOVs particularly, and we'll look at some florins in a second, but with these sorts of things, you've got to look out for copies, for fakes, and they're not always obvious without, like I said, fish scales or an XRF. But B, just because it's a copy doesn't necessarily make it worthless. Quite often, particularly with the sovereigns, you will see that they will have at least a small gold content and sometimes even more than a normal gold content.
Wow.
So if you're just a stacker and I don't care, I just want best bang for the buck, grab a jeweler's copy. You pay a little bit less for them. Some of the jeweler's copies are actually worth more depending on the jeweler that created them as well. That's a
awesome.
whole separate video that we could do another day.
But how cool is that when fake gold can be worth more than the real thing?
Yeah.
That is crazy. Let's take a look at the florins.
So the florins are a little bit, you don't see a lot of fake florins because it's illegal for a start, because they're still, and the SOVs too to a degree, because they're still legal tender.
Yeah.
But here you can see it's a little bit more obvious in this case because we've got quite a shiny new looking one, which is actually the fake.
Yeah.
And then the bottom one, which is actually a bit grimy and circulated, which is the real one.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that this top one is actually not a bad fake. If I'd grabbed a cleaned florin, you would actually be struggling to tell the difference between the two.
Okay, there's one reason to not clean your old coins.
As a coin collector, I cry every time someone cleans one of their coins.
Makes no sense to me, but
yeah.
Yep.
But well, it does to me. People, when they buy these for bullion value, which quite a lot of them do, it doesn't decrease their value because they've bought them for bullion prices, for their precious metal price.
Yeah, true.
So if you don't want a grotty old looking coin,
That's
you
true.
want a brand new shiny. There was a craze for a while there where people were cleaning their 1966 50s.
Right.
And some of them we get in the store are stunning. They look fantastic,
Yeah.
like better than brand new.
Yeah.
But we know they've been cleaned. But
Yes.
if that floats your boat, why not?
Exactly.
Anyway, let's
point.
test it.
Very
So the
good
real
point.
one, which is what we'd expect,
Yeah.
we'd expect to see somewhere, because it's the later decimal coin, the later pre-decimal coin, you'd expect to see somewhere around that 50% mark. Now, they always test just over,
Yep.
but I don't know if that's the technology of the day didn't allow them to mix it exact or what it is,
Sure.
but we can see there it's testing at 54%.
Yep.
If we test the fake that we know is a jeweler's copy, we will actually see that it tests out. I think this one's about, there you go, 86% silver.
That is huge.
So again, from a precious metals perspective, the fake is actually worth more, almost twice as much, as the real one.
So then, the reason again would be that similar reason, I guess.
Similar reason. They needed to produce it for whatever reason.
Right.
It could be part of jewelry, and I think this one, I think we can see some clasp marks on it, so there's a fair chance it was in some jewelry.
I see.
But it could be that they wanted it for a decoration on something. It could be that it was an art piece. It could be, there's a whole variety of reasons why they created them.
Wow.
And again, it would have been the alloy that they had lying around at the time when they created it.
That's so cool. That's fascinating that fake stuff can be worth more than the real stuff. You're full of surprises and knowledge, and that's
full of something anyway.
Yeah, and that's why we've continued to hire you here at Bullion Now.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
That's all right, no worries. Anything else they need to know, or is it just the old like, share, subscribe, all that stuff?
Yeah, one warning I'd probably give is not to create your own. At the end of the day, these are legal tender.
That's highly illegal.
So you are counterfeiting legal tender.
Yeah.
So technically, these are a counterfeit, and I know that we've tried to return these to the federal police before, and they're not interested because it's such an old coin and it's in such low quantities. But it is against federal law to counterfeit Australian currency, and all Australian currency that's been produced right back to the start of Australia being discovered. So everything, sovereigns, the whole lot, they are still technically legal tender and can be presented as Australian currency, with the exception of the holy dollar and dump. It is the only one that's been decommissioned in the whole of history of Australia.
So the jeweller's copies making these sovereigns, they're actually not supposed to, is that
correct?
Right?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's technically illegal.
Wow.
It was obviously never prosecuted because they have been so frequently made.
Sure.
But yeah, back in the day.
So don't try this at home, kids.
Do not try this at home. But it's a fascinating part of our numismatic or precious metal history.
Fantastic. Well, enlightening as always. Thank you very much. And do all that stuff I said before. Like, share, subscribe. And that's it from me.
And from me too.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.